Coming soon in late summer 2023. A man, torn by doubt, exposed by fear, and the only thing keeping him together is his love for one man. Join us in a tale of mystery, horror, and love, in a world where two lovers are torn apart, as much as they're brought together. Follow the compelling story of Jesse, SPF, Gary, and Marin, the most unlikely of allies forced into cooperation for the very fate of humanity. Rated R, for retarded.
Do you remember taking your first sip of cold beer? You were damn near only 12 years old, sitting by the glistening lake with your pa. My daddy always told me, boy, when you grow up you need to be a good man. Well, here I am playing Magic the Gathering, and I'm 100% not the man my father wanted me to be. But sporefrog is. It was a warm night back in '96. Me and my boy sporefrog were going into a drifter bar to go wet our whistles. You see, back in that day, me and Spory used to frequent these bars. So Spory went up to the bartender and asked him, "Hey, let's get some swamp water, and don't hold back on the flies." Well, it was around that moment a few good old boys stopped the music. "We don't take kindly around these parts to you frog-belly sons of bitches." Before you could blink an eye there, he was sacrificing his life for me, preventing damn near all the combat damage I would have received from those good old boys. Spory was never the same after that. Many years later, here we are. Sitting in a damn old folks' home. Things have changed in this world. Boys are girls, girls are boys. I just can't handle it anymore. Me and old Spory are still together. Unfortunately, dementia has taken over his mind. It was the night of 2023 when Spory finally passed to Jesus. I was devastated. So here I am, in my wheelchair watching the days pass by. They told me, "Jesse, you better stop pissing your pants or I'm going to take the yardstick to you." Joke's on them. I'm used to it, and you know why that is. Because I'm the man my father always wanted me to be. Later that year, something magical happened. A young woman named Marin walked into the old folks' home. She locked eyes with me immediately. I was enjoying my mashed potatoes the nurse handed me earlier, when all of a sudden there she was standing right in front of me. She wasted no time at all telling me about some sort of special powers she had. I scoffed. "What kind of powers? We talking about, young lady?" And I didn't believe my own ears. "Sporefrog," she told me, whispering it into my ear. I lunged back in my chair. "Nurse," I called. She urged me not to worry, looking back to point at Marin. She was gone, vanished without a trace. "But she was just there," I exclaimed. The nurse told me, "Jesse, it's about time. I think you go back to your room. You're seeing things." A few days had passed when I found a note under my door. The note said, "Come meet me out by the graveyard out back at 3 a.m. sharp. Signed, Spory." I gasped and put down the note. Chapter 2. The Resurrection. I'm not a crazy person, and I'm definitely not a damn fool, but I put on my glasses, looked at this handwriting. Good God, that's Sporefrog's handwriting. Am I going nuts? No, Jesse, pull yourself together. You were a Marine sergeant in name, for God's sakes. I told myself that I just needed a good night's sleep. I did my nightly rituals and got straight into bed. I couldn't get the image of Spory out of my mind. Who was it that wrote that damn note? That's when I heard a tapping coming from the window. I ran out of bed, ready to yell at another teenager. I gasped. Standing under the apple trees north to the entrance of the woods, there she was. Marin. She has a peculiar look on her face, almost ushering me towards her just with her eyes. It was at this point in time I told myself, hey, I'm 90 years old, I piss my own pants. If she wanted to hurt me, she would have already done it. So I grabbed my sandals and bathrobe and proceeded to leave towards to the north part of the building, exiting straight into the entrance to the woods. The air was warm and foggy. Leaves were beginning to fall from the trees. It's early October. Every step I took further away from the old folks' home felt like I was walking further into the twilight zone. I thought to myself, Jesus, Jesse, maybe you are going crazy. A rush of fear and anxiety washed over my body. It was at that time she appeared again, right where she stood before by the entrance to the woods. "Hey!" I shouted, running towards the woods, ready to finally get some answers. But when I got to the entrance of the woods, the only thing I found was an expedition map. I read the map out loud. Cabal coffers, it stated. I noticed the map made of paper that looked almost handmade, Immediately out of nowhere, I felt a hand pressed against my back. Jerking away with a flash of anxiety, I turned around. It was Kokusho, the Japanese man from room 211. "What are you doing out here all alone, Jesse?" Kokusho asked. "Well, there was someone who asked me to meet them here," I exclaimed. "You'd better come inside, it's not safe for you out here," said Kokusho. Chapter 3. Strange Trails. "I want some goddamn answers, and I want them now," I exclaimed. Kokusho looked at me with a peering gaze. Not a single thought was behind those glazed-over eyes. You see, Kokusho was blind. During the war in Hiroshima, Kokusho had a special device implanted in his heart if it were to stop. You guessed it, an explosion dealing damage to everyone else would happen. Everyone was afraid of him. For this reason, they treated the poor old bastard like a time bomb. I wasn't afraid, though. He was my friend, not my opponent. A few moments passed, and I handed Kokusho the map. "Jesus Christ," he exclaimed. "This map is from the Jurassic era." I gave Kokusho a puzzled look. "English, please, Kokusho." "It's really old," he said. What could this mean? I thought to myself. Well, there's only one way to find out. I picked up the map and started heading into the forest. Kokusho not far behind. It took him longer due to the blindness. As we headed into the damp, narrow pathway, I could only feel like something terrible was about to happen to us. 3 yards from the old sitting bench lies the entrance to these so-called coffers. "I don't see a thing," said Kokusho. "Well, no shit," I said, pointing at a large pillar of rock and stone a few yards off the path. "There it is. A small 1 foot by 1 foot opening in the rock. How in God's name am I supposed to fit into this tiny hole?" "We must go around," Kokusho exclaimed. "You're right, we have to go up through the deep woods." I thought to myself, what would Sporefrog do? If I had him next to me, now I could just ask him. Then I had an idea. I could send Kokusho into the hole and I could go up the trail. My daddy told me when I was a boy, "Remember, son, if you get lost in the woods, run as fast as you can in a random direction and always split up from your friends." So I went up the trail and Kokusho went into the hole. The trail was damp and dark. It felt like my feet were sinking into the mud with every step. But eventually I made it to the top of the rock pillar. I glanced around as I caught my breath, gasping and frantically looking around. I noticed the sun was rising on the horizon, breaking away at the nightly fog. As I scanned the flat mesa, there it was, some sort of circular rock structure made of sandstone and quartz, with smaller rocks circling the large center one. I walked closer to the strange object, still having difficulty seeing due to the sun not peeking fully over the mountain, and I saw her. Marin. Chapter 4. True Meaning. "There's only a few things I like in this world. My sporey and a cold beer," I exclaimed to Marin. She looked at me in excitement, almost like a friend I've always known. "You made it, Jesse." "Barely." I told her. "I sent Kokusho down into the secret tunnel." "What secret tunnel?" As she looked around and pointed at the structure. "These are the Cabal coffers." It was then the pillars began to glow a deep, warming sapphire blue. "Take this and place it in the center of the structure." She handed me a dead rabbit, freshly killed. "Go now and speak to your friend," she said. A rush of calmness came over my body. This was insane to me. Taking a dead rabbit to a slab of rock, what kind of magic is this? It felt like my very soul was being pulled towards the center. It felt like destiny. I placed the rabbit on the rock. With a loud crack, the pillar turned from a sapphire blue to a dark purple. And then it happened. Silence ran over the mesa. I turned around, almost suspended in time. Sporefrog. He looked at me, and I looked at him. "Is it really you, Spore?" He reached out and touched my hand. "I'm not long for this world, Jesse. It's my duty to sacrifice myself for the good of others." I fell to my knees, weeping into Sporefrog's torso. "Please don't leave me again, Sporey. I must, but I will be back. Trust in Marin. She will guide you to your true meaning." It was at that time Sporefrog glowed into an angelic, bright white light. The light transferred to Marin instantly and became one with her. Confused, saddened, but feeling triumphant, I walked to Marin. "What's our next step?" I asked. She explained to me that once every day she may return Sporefrog back from the dead, so Sporefrog could help heal the world of its damage. It's his destiny, she exclaimed. But I must have more spirits brought to the pillar in order for me to help heal this world. It was at that time Marin handed me a scroll. That scroll had the name Green Sun's Zenith on it. She told me, use this scroll and find me the chosen ones, Kokusho and Gary from room 203, and don't forget, we are at war, and you, Jesse, you are the only one able to help me and Sporefrog get enough strength to defeat the Dark One. So there I was, holding destiny in the palm of my hands, marching forward to the old folks' home, the sun warming my back, and Sporefrog in my heart. Chapter 5. An Unlikely Ally. As I headed down the mountain, covered head to toe in mud and leaves, I couldn't help to believe there was more to this life than I expected. Just weeks ago, I was eating my taters and hot dogs at the old folks' cafeteria. Now look at me, scaling the side of a mountain, in the woods with some unfounded power I must reconcile within myself to understand. Scaling the mountain down towards the lower basin, I began to hear faint, muffled yelling. Tamagotchi, Bonkai, Sushi Roll. Slashing in a blind rage. It must be Kokusho. I cornered the trailhead, and there he was covered to toe in what could only be described as raccoon bites, dirt, and feces, with a confused look on my face. Kokusho no Detsu, I yelled. He stopped immediately. He had been frantically chopping away at trees and bushes with his trusty Masamune sword. I'm so sorry, he said. It's okay now, Kokusho. The bad coons won't hurt you anymore. I would have embraced him, but he smelled like feces. Come on, Kokusho, we must go back to the old folks' home and recruit. Recruit? He asked. Yes, my Japanese friend. And recruit we must. I headlong through the trail back to the old folks' home. Kokusho would find his way back hours later. I walked through the double doors at the old folks' home, busting through feeling like I was the chosen one. That's when my day would be turned on its head. Jaylene, the head orderly, was there today. Jesse, what have you been doing? You're filthy, she yelled. Why did this bitch have to be here today? She walked me back to my room and forced me into the hot shower. She brought me some warm tea and my breakfast, put it on the end of my bed, and proceeded to dress me. She asked me if maybe later I'd like to go to bingo. Normally I would have told her off. But today was different. I must meet with Gary from 203. He would definitely be there. The man never missed bingo. Later that day, after eating my pea soup, I began to walk downstairs to bingo. I cornered the main lobby and headed towards the recreation room where they held bingo every day. And there he was, Gary Gray, a black man sitting at about 5'7", sickly and with a thin and pale face. I proceeded to sit by him. Take a seat, young man, he said. Gary was a merchant in the town of Asphodel, north of Milwaukee, so the man knew his way around words. Gary was marking his bingo page when he looked up from a muffled ruckus in the other room. Kokusho had made it back home. Muffled in the other room, "Oh Jesus, Kokusho, you smell like shit," one of the orderlies shouted. I quickly pivoted the conversation. So anyway, Gary, have you seen anything strange going on around here lately? No, chuckling, unless you're talking about them moving pot pie night to Fridays. I laughed along with him. What do you think of this, Gary? You were a merchant, right? I sure was, said Gary. I handed him the expedition map I found earlier. His eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. My God, he whispered under his breath. This must be from the Jurassic era. This thing is thousands of years old. So you know about the coffers? Does a bear shit in the woods? You're damn right I know about the coffers. But nobody has seen these for thousands of years, and all of a sudden, poof, you bring a map that's leading right to them. You see my confusion, right? I thought to myself, Marin, you are one smart girl. Right at the end of my thought, my pocket started glowing. It was the Zenith scroll from earlier. I'm going to straight with you, Gary. I'm not really sure where all this is going, but we need to go find Kokusho. From 211, he asked. Yes, he's also part of Marin plan. Marin, he screamed, standing straight up. Oh, my back. He whimpered. Yes, calm down, Gary. What do you know about Marin? Marin was my great-great-grandmother's name. Long ago they called her Marin the Dark Witch. We've been chased our entire lives by a secret society devoted to destroying my great-grandmother's legacy. What they didn't know is Marin, my gram, was not a dark witch but a powerful sorceress, sent here to save the world. Gary adjusted his glasses. I have no choice. Retirement is out of the question. Let's go find Kokusho and save the world.